Mr. Trinidad, tell me what scene you on. Do you just like political confusion? You criticizing the way you live, yet you can't produce an alternative. You say you against the power structure, you ain't like the opposition either. But take care, you jump out the hot water and end up in the center of the fire. Because you refuse to vote in election, but then you want revolution. You're strongly against communism. You walk out on colonialism. You say if William had to go, but who to replace him? You ain't know. So to make a long story short from in front, Trinidadians they really know what they want. My friend, if you don't want democracy, the opposite is guerrilla activity. If you don't want democratic improvement, you have to want a revolutionist government. And yet when Guy Harewood went in the hills with Jennifer Jones, you let him. You come like the ass in the lion's skin. Because you say Robinson is a traitor. You say what's than that about Ranger? You say Kamal seeking the enemies. You are ODAC, neither DLP, and you say TNM is only Ratchet B. Well, you tying up yourself. I gonna tell you why, my guy. Trinidadian talking black power. It's not wrong for a man to love his culture. Yes, you walk around with your Afro flag. But although they're rapping for eating roti like if you're born in India, so who you go blame when you make your book and end up like a cat on a hot tube. You smile when they bring to debate. William say he want to retire. You beg him to stay a little longer. You reject for Prime Minister, like your sense of reasoning goes and comes. It won't surprise me if you call back Albert Guns. You say that you didn't want your dictator, yet one fella to reign forever. Abbott Malik, you say he guilty. Pharmacy slave, yet you set him free. Long ago you didn't want Fidel Castro, but now you say the same Castro is a hero. Head of the wall eventually. Because you say Butler was too high-handed. Marriage uneducated. You say that we can't trust Jamada. You find Sukaran to Konkosa. You say the accent is on the young man, yet you run and call back Ashford Singh. But you won't call back until you this later. That is why they formed the Mahasabha. They're conservative, only talking race. Yet you see so much Dogla all around the place. How come them and Nakuni is such good friend? You're making your own self a package show. You might end up just like Rumpelstiltskin. You call back Solomon Abajon, spending your money in London. You say the country's A-strength fighter is a regular ganja smoker. You call your picture a seditious traitor. Now that same traitor are you union leader. It won't surprise me if you move Malik from that room. Home appears too much. Trinidadian, walking, talking peace. Yes, he always in trouble with the police. Saying peace and love, right on, brother man. Yet if you watch him hard, you want to break your hand. But then, how come them and Black Pudding is such good friends? They're making their own self-package show. You might end up just like Rumpelstiltskin. But that's us. And then when Marie gone down Walker, they run and they call the same Kara. You say Mahathir too quiet and soft, and Victor Campbell is a big show. You were what Eric Kamal called neither part. If it's a bad you want well call Doctor. It is guerrilla activity. Me was do you just like political confusion? You criticizing the way you live, yet you can't produce an alternative. You say you against the power structure. You ain't like the opposition either. But take care you jump out the center the fire. Because you refuse to vote in election. But then you want revolution. You're strongly against communism. You walk out on colonialism. You say William had to go. But who do replace him? You end up. So to make a long story short from in front, Trinidadians they really know what they want. My friend, if you don't want democracy, opposite is guerrilla activity. If you don't want democratic improvement, you have to want a revolutionist. government. And Yearwood went in the hills with Jennifer Jones. You let them get killed. All you're doing is grinning and skylarking. You come like the ass in the lion's skin. Because you say Robinson is a traitor. You say what's that about Ranger? You say Kamal Marxist Leninist. You are ODAC, neither DLP, and you say DNM is only ratchet beam. Well, you tying up yourself. I won't tell you why. Trinidadians just like plenty mama guys. Afro Trinidadian talking black power. It's not wrong for a man to love his culture. Yes, you walk around. But although Africa, you eating roti like if you're born in India. So who you go blame when you make your food? And end up like a cat on a hot tin roof. You smile when they bring him to the bed. William say he want to retire. You beg him to stay a little longer. You reject a call for brightness, and some reasoning goes and comes. It won't surprise me if you call back Albert Guns. You say that you didn't want no dictator. You want one fella to reign forever. Abbott Malik, you say he's guilty. Parmasani the same, yet you set him free. Long ago you didn't want Fidel Castro, but now you say the same Castro is a hero. Well, this attitude, like Humpty Dumpty, you might fall off the wall eventually. Because you say Butler was too high-handed, even Maraj uneducated. You say that we can't trust Jamada. You find Sukaran to Konkosa. You say the accent is on the young man, yet you run and call back Ashford Sinanan. But you won't call back until you call disaster, like the colonial days of the slave master.
the maestro, Mr. Trinidadian. You can say Mr. Guyanese. You don't know what you really want. A calypso of self-criticism. You know, the contradictions in our society, the contradictions, the complexity, some scholars would say. Some will say the contradiction. I grew up hearing old people, they say, nigger too contrary. That's a contradiction. Contrary, you contrary. Oh boy. That's why I love being Guyanese and love being West Indian, love being black. When you bring all those identities together and you put them you put them in a mix. Oh, uh, it's quite a society. And our artists, our scholars, they dig deep into our society and sometimes holds up that society in front of us and we don't recognize it. Always our society is grappling with phenomena, grappling with phenomenon. And sometimes as we grapple, we get ourselves in a tangle and we can't understand it. Maestro, oh Lord, he is one of the early proponents of soca, the soul of calypso, which is really a merging of traditional calypso and the Indian beat becomes soul of calypso and became known as soca. The inventor of soca, of course, is Lord Shorty Eye, later became Ras Shorty Eye. And it was in the mid-1970s that people like Maestro and Shorty and so on began to experiment with this new beat, which became known as soca. Really to merge the African beat and Indian beat. Maestro and Ras Shorty Eye, they were from the south of Trinidad and they live among East Indians. And so if you listen to the kind of music that comes out of the south of Trinidad, it's unique and it kind of reflects the ethnic mix in that part of Trinidad. And it's from there that what we now know as soca, which is really, like I said, a quickening of the beat. Calypso tended to be slower because the accent in calypso is on the message. The message, just as reggae. Before reggae, there was ska. Ska was fast, and it was mostly instrumental. The emphasis was really on the instrument rather than on the lyrics. And then ska gave way to rocksteady. Rocksteady lasted for 18 months. And rocksteady was really the slowing down of the beat of ska. And the accent was on the lyrics. And the lyrics was, boy meets girl. Those of you who remember rocksteady, was a lot of R&B music that they were do-overs in Jamaica, and then they started to put their own lyrics to it. But it was slowing down of the beat, and the accent moving from the instruments to the lyrics. And then rocksteady gave way to reggae, and reggae slowed down the beat even more, and then the accent was on the lyrics. So we saw the same thing in calypso. In calypso, the accent was on the lyrics, and then as it merged into soca, there was now a faster beat. So as reggae was slowing down, calypso was speeding up. Really lovely. It's wonderful to be Caribbean, to be Guyanese, and I can say I've been lucky. I've had a chance to study our society, to make sense of it. And 40 odd years of that is not 40 odd days. And as you get deeper into the root of the society, you really discover the vast array of wisdom that cometh forth from among ordinary people. And that what people like myself do, scholars and artists and so on, is really, Quayana puts it so wonderful. He said the artist and the scholar, by extension, it is like a gardener with a watering can. you know, he waters the people's experiences, taking the people's experiences, refine them into song, into dance, into poetry, into prose, into books, and giving them back to the people as a form of cultural and political nourishment. That's how Kwayana describes the role of the artist, the role of the scholar by extension. And so our artists, for example, are constantly, as I said before, taking our own experience and putting it up in front of us. And sometimes we are shocked at what we see. Sometimes we are shocked at what we see. Guyana, our country, is really experiencing some of that. You know, I was speaking to one of my classmates recently, and I was making the point that we went into high school in 1970. 1970. This is 4 years after independence, 2 years after the Rodney riots in Jamaica, which gave rise to the Black Power movement, 2 years after reggae was born. And so we are going into high school, and we are being taught by teachers who are wearing afro. We are being taught by teachers who are products of the 1960s. They're going to school in the 1960s. They're going to training college in the 1960s. They're a product of all of that ferment of revolution and Black power and all of that thing, independence. Oh, we welcome independence to Guyana. I remember that as a child. What a wonderful moment. And so we are being taught by teachers who are products of the 60s as we are entering high school in the 1970s. And we are not learning Shakespeare. We are learning Samuel Zelvon and Andrew Salkey and Vivian Naipaul and Edgar Metterholzer and Martin Carter. Oh, this is the dark time, my love. All round the land, brown beetles crawl about. The shining sun is hidden in the sky. Red flowers bend their heads in awful sorrow. This is the dark time, my love. It's a season of oppression, dark metal, and tears. You know, Martin Carter is really describing the invasion of Guyana in 1953 in that poem, This is the Dark Time, My Love. And when you heard that first, you're thinking this is a love story. And then your teachers are beginning to say, when he talks about brown beetles, he's talking about his soldiers in their brown uniform. And you say, what? The creative intellect of our people? Red flowers bend their heads in awful sorrow, describing Guyanese people as the red flowers bend their heads in awful sorrow. This is the dark time. And so we are entering high school in that ferment, and they're teaching us in our own language, our own writers, our own teachers coming to school in the Afro. And by 1973, Bob Marley comes onto the scene. Man to man is so unjust. Children, you don't know who to trust. Taking His Majesty Haile Selassie's United Nations speech and turning it into song. War in the East, war in the West. Until the ignoble and unhappy regime. So in school and out of school through the arts, you are learning about yourself and you are learning about the world. You are learning about what you gave the world and what the world did to you. It was a wonderful time to be in school, and some of you are products of that. Nobody had to give us consciousness. The consciousness was there. If consciousness means an understanding of your own self and your place in the world, both as individual and as groups. It was a wonderful time to be socialized. Anti-imperialism, and Bob Marley said, Rastaman no work for no CIA. What CIA? We had never heard of CIA. And we are hearing it from Bob Marley. We didn't have to read it in a book. Informal education. Indira Gandhi and Nyerere and Kaunda, they're visiting Guyana, school children. You're going out there. These are great leaders, Indian leaders, African leaders, Asian leaders, West Indian leaders. You're seeing them with your naked eye. You're learning about the connection of Guyana to Africa, the connection of Guyana to India and China and Portugal. Consciousness is raining down. That is what produced people like me. We are learning about the complexity, what Maestro is talking about in that Calypso. Indians preaching and they're forming the Mahasabha, but they're coming into black villages and by the black pudding, wipe them out clean and go back into the Indian villages. And black people talking about black power, but they're eating roti like they're born in India, according to Maestro. Grappling all the time with our reality. And it is that grappling that has produced generations. The complexity of our society. And then we come today, and our young people are grappling with today's society. But there's no Bob Marley. There's no Bob Marley who's singing to them. There's no Bob Marley who's telling them it takes a revolution to make a solution. There's no Bob Marley who is saying to them, soon we'll find out who's the real revolutionary because I don't want my people to be contrary. They're not seeing Indira Gandhi. They're not seeing a Kenneth Kaunda and a Julius Nyerere. They're grappling with a world just as previous generations grappled, but it's a different world. Their teachers are not wearing afro anymore. Their teachers are wearing braids. But they don't understand the relevance and the importance of those braids because the consciousness is not coming down. And so they're there grappling with this world, grappling with our country. And there are false prophets who are misleading them, and they become, unfortunately, they become victims. You know, over the weekend, I gave an interview to a media outfit. They operate mostly on social media, Guyana Standard. I know the young people who have put that together. They worked in other media, but they now have their own outfit and they've come on the scene in the last year. So I know them. I follow their work. And one of them had asked me for an interview about 3 months ago, 2 months ago, and it never occurred. And I agreed to do the interview on Sunday, to tape the interview on Sunday. And I've been following their work and following the young people in the media. And I think they're doing some good work. But if I have a criticism of some of the younger, let me preface. One, let me say what I want to say, something before I say what I want to say. About 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I was having a conversation with a journalist. And she was telling me about Reuters. She said, look, I read Reuters story. I read on the role of the journalist, and I was taken aback because I hadn't heard a young person call that outfit Reuters for a long time. My generation, knows about Reuters. And I remember being very, very taken aback because I said, well, this journalist is really reaching beyond the obvious in order to prepare ourselves for what is a challenging profession. And one of the things I think that is missing with our younger professionals is not enough appreciation for the arc of history. They're extremely brilliant people. Brilliant. But there seems to be almost a kind of ahistorical, a few years ago, I think it must have been about 13 years ago, I went to a Caribbean conference in Grenada. And of course, you're in Grenada, scholars are in Grenada, 800, 900 Caribbean scholars are there. And so the Grenada Revolution dominated the conference. And younger scholars in their 30s at that time were telling us it's the first time they hear about the Grenadian Revolution. The Grenadian Revolution was from 1979 to 83. This is about 30 years later, I think. It was 2012. And I was shocked. These are people with PhDs. They're teaching Caribbean studies. And they say, this is the first time they're hearing about this Grenada Revolution. And some of them had none of it. But it's the first time that they're really getting a deep analysis of it. And I remember being shocked. But as you get deeper, we live in a world. And these younger people, these younger gen are products of the world. They're not products of the world that shaped me and shaped many of us who are older. They're products of a world today. And they're being shaped by that. And there has been a relentless campaign by many forces in the world to erase history, to silence history. And unfortunately, young people are being socialized in that environment. You've always had people who would say, forget about history, forget about what happened in the past. That has always been there. But it's much more widespread now because there is an institutional push to silence history. And so our young people are becoming bright in a really dark environment. And so, like we who grapple, they are constantly grappling with the contradictions of their time. And so I teach young people. I've been doing that for 30-odd years. Most of them between 18 and 22 because they come out of high school, they go straight to college. So I have a sense of young people and the motion of young people. And I've always, whenever I see or hear young people, young professionals, young people in the villages grappling with what has become a very difficult world to figure out, I would have a quiet word with them, sometimes congratulating them, sometimes suggesting things to them. Because it's not easy trying to understand the world today. That context is not there. You know, when we were boys and girls, you all remember when we learned in spelling, they said spell Mississippi, spell Czechoslovakia. Those were hard words to spell. But in spelling Mississippi and Czechoslovakia, you are learning of Czechoslovakia, you are learning of Mississippi, that these are countries and so on and so forth. And so I'm aware of that deficiency in our society, which then affects our young people negative ways. Now, the PPP government, for the last 33 years, they have governed Guyana for most of those 33 years. They have introduced a kind of individualism in the society. There's no national service anymore, where people go and work together and study together. They're no longer the clubs. When I was a boy, I belonged to about 8, 9 clubs in Buxton, in a little village. And I'm sure most of you can remember that. Sports club, debating club, drama club, this club, church club. They're not those things. No. Our young people are really being socialized in a different environment. And I watch the struggle. Sometimes I'm disappointed. Other times I'm encouraged. And whether they're young media people, young professors, young artists, all of them are grappling. The young housewife, the young vendor, all of them are trying to make sense. Some of them, as they work, they try to make sense. The confidence and attachment of the worker to the union is not the same as it was 30 years ago, 40 years ago. The PPP has introduced a kind of individualism, and in fairness to the PPP, that individualism is not a Guyanese thing. It's not the PPP invented. The PPP has embraced it. So solidarity and collectivism and so on, they're not part of the popular consciousness in the same way. I'm looking after myself. And so you have in this society where governments have always have a kind of clientelistic relationship with their people. By clientelistic, look, we are the employer, we are the powerhouse, you are our client. What we call clientelistic politics. It has always been there. But it has now gone to a different level. The PPP has set the government of Guyana up as the be-all, the end-all of everything. And they say, look, if you want to progress in this society, don't worry, no cooperatives. Don't worry with no neighborhood, nothing. Be a client. You come to us and we fix you up. Of course, there was not a ready embrace of it. But the PPP kept getting back into power, and even when they're out of power, they were out of power for that 5 years, those 5 years, you know, the philosophy was still there. And so therefore, you watch young people today grappling with this phenomenon, whereby do I acquiesce to this notion that my salvation in life lies with me as an individual? Or do I listen to my parents who saying, stand up for your family and your community? And they're grappling with that. They're grappling with it. And when you look around and you notice there's no big fundamental change in the society, you say, well, if I can't be them, I join them. And you're doing so without the arc of history. You're doing so almost in an environment where you are forced, you're bullied to do so. I have never heard people, especially younger people, talk so much about my right, my right, my right, my right. And then you say, did you read the Constitution to know what your fundamental rights are? No. But yet you talk about my right, my right. Everything is my right. You do, you know, you slash your throat, you're right. You beat up somebody, you're right. But it is the environment in which they're socialized. And some big people have gone into it too. Because the society has brought us to this point. And some of us are saying, no, we are never going to move forward as a society if all we think about is our individual needs and not the larger needs of the society. I mean, half of this society have no interest in going and joining the army or the police. No, absolutely no interest. The same ethnicity that was there 50 years ago is the same ethnicity today that dominates. There's no desire to go serve my country. Who takes care of our bodies? We sing, not a blade of grass. But we ain't going, we're not volunteering for the army. But yet we're singing lustily, not a blade of grass, not one chorus. The individual thing. I don't care. I get stopped on the road for crazy driving. I pay a small piece. Yeah, you, yeah, me. That's where our society is. And so it dawned on me recently that my description of a group of individuals who recently joined the PPP, African Guyanese individuals, mostly younger people, and my criticism of them as betrayers. Not because they join, but because once they get over there, then you have to justify why you are there. You see, this is how race was invented. Let me divert a little bit, as you all know I like to do. You see, slavery started as a trade. The invention of technology, you know, the cotton gin, the, sugarcane mill, and you have technology. The Europeans came to to the Americas. They found native Indians here with land. The land was fertile. They take away the land from the native Indians. They developed technology. You don't have to have labor. They attempted to use native Indians as slave labor. And the church, which was very powerful at that time, said, no, you cannot use these people. You can't use them. And the church rationalized that the reason you can't use native Indians is that they have souls. They may not be white, but they're what Thomas Jefferson said, they're brown people. They're white people in brown skins. They're white people in brown skins. And so they couldn't bring Europeans because the church said, well, you can't have Europeans working for nothing because they have souls. And so the next thing was to go to West Africa, where the Portuguese and others had gone and seen these people there. And they always thought that these people were different. They weren't wearing clothes. They didn't reason that they were there in the tropics, where the sun at. While you all Europeans come from cold places, so you all got put on things for cover yourself. And they went to Africa and people were walking about, without clothes, and they weren't groping each other. And they couldn't understand it. So they always thought that these people were different. And so now, blocked from using Indians and from using white people, they just decide, look, we're going to go to Africa, and started with the slave trade. And they began to bring these Africans over. And the moral question was posed. Why these dark-skinned people? Why? Why not the white-skinned and brown-skinned people? Why these dark-skinned people? And the answer they gave was that these dark-skinned people are inferior. They don't have souls. And the church went along with it, the Catholic Church. They don't have souls. So we are justified. We are justified in enslaving them. And thus was born the notion of race, where skin color with meaning. If you're white skin mean that you are superior, you can't become a slave. Black skin mean that you're inferior, you could become a slave. And then it moved from religion to economics to the law. And here we are today. So this small group, who decide, look, we're going to join the PPP. But having gotten over there, they now have to justify why they're there. Why you are acting different from the vast majority of people who look like you. Well, those people over there who look like me, they're stupid. They're allowing themselves to be owned by the PNC. They're lazy. They don't like work. And if you come over this side and you hang out with Indians like work. And you begin to use these characterizations to differentiate you from the majority of your compatriots. Their leaders are worthless. They can't run nothing. I've come here. When I was over there with the PNC for years, I didn't feel welcome. And since I come over here, I feel welcome, because over there, they're not real people. So they're not welcoming. Over here is real people. I feel so welcomed. And they begin to create a narrative of them versus me. I am the philosopher king. The rest of them on the fringe. I don't read Carter G. Woodson. I don't read Walter Rodney. I'm not into that. Because they're writing about race. And I don't see race. I'm not blind, but I don't see skin color. This is the narrative. I don't see race. I don't. So you make your move. Good. But having made your move, you now have to justify why you made that move. And you create this new narrative of where you come from. And I saw that phenomenon. And I wanted to clip it. And I used some choice language to describe such people. What I'm learning now recently is that there is a larger group of young Black professionals who have decided, look, I've been at study, I got a master's degree, and I ain't want to live like a pauper. And the PPP in there, they got the body, I'm going to play ball with them. I'm going to play ball with them. In order to survive. So far, so good. But here is this chap, David Hines, who I respected. But he now saying people like me, them who gone over, he calling them LBs. Oh, shucks. It means that if I go over, he gonna call me LBs or LB. And so there has developed a frenzy in section of the young Black professional class about how it go look. I think it was a Calypsonian sing the song how it go look. Hey lad, I'm forgetting these days, senior moment. How it go look, how it go look. So they're thinking how it go look. Because the vast majority in the African Guyanese community are giving them hell. They may say that David Hines and others give them the ideology, and they're using the ideology and giving them hell. And so they develop an almost fear among this section. Oh boy, I going over there in order to eat the bread. But these people now cussing me. And so they became a preoccupation. There has become a preoccupation with this term lick bottom. It's not even a Guyanese term. It's a Trinidadian term. Because I made my comments after playing that calypso by Crow Crow. In Guyana, we don't say lick bottom, we say ass lickers. In some places, they say boot lickers. In America, they say kiss the ring or brown nose. But there now, as there was a fear among this section that, boy, if I go over there, I'm going to be called a house slave, I'm going to be called a lick bottom, I'm going to be called this, I'm going to be called that. So I was well aware that I was going on this program and that I sense that the young people there felt that my characterization of the couple as lick bottoms, maybe I am talking to a critical mass of young people. Because all of a sudden, my criticism of 6 to a dozen people became criticism of the race. And I don't think these young people are stupid. They know 6 or 12 people and represent the race. But I think it's a way of saying, look, I want to remain Black, but I got to play ball over there. And what's wrong with that? And so I went in the interview with that sense, I wanted to be respectful to the young people, and I went into the interview. And of course, the questioning was exactly that. This language, not the thoughts, not the thoughts, the language. Your language, Dr. Hines. I think these young professionals know better. But they're grappling with the world. They're grappling with the Guyana. And in the grappling, things are not easy. When you're grappling with something because it's complex. If a thing is easy, you're not grappling with it. And so I went to the interview. And the very first question asked of me, I answered. And the question had to do with whether I'm a racist or not. And I answered that question. Let me see here. There you go. I answered that question. And the question, like I said, was, are you a racist, Dr. Hines? There we go. Here it is. Here is what I'm looking for. All right.
Hines we see today.
The same Hines.
Walk me through your advocacy of that time and to the Hines we see today.
The same Hines. I come from a political tendency that is against discrimination, whether it comes from African governments or Indian governments or white governments. Back in the 1970s as a boy, when I got into politics, East Indians in this country said they were oppressed by a black government. And I gave them my solidarity. I went to prison fighting against a black government, a government that looked like this. Spent 3 years in jail as a young man. And governments changed. The PPP came into power and they began to practice the same kind of discrimination and the same principle I held back then, the same principle I said, you are wrong. You are now discriminating against the other group and you are wrong. And in 2015, a black government came back to power. And I happened to have been part of that government at some level. But when that government was wrong, I said, you're wrong. And they fired me as an employee in the Ministry of National Cohesion. I also wrote a column for the Guyana Chronicle, the state newspaper, and I wrote editorials for that paper, and they fired me. And they said, because I should not be criticizing a government that I'm part of. And I reject that. Any government that discriminates against people. And so the government from 2015 to 2020 came back and doing the same thing. This country has a history of governments of one race discriminating against the other race. I'm totally against that. So you're not seeing a new David Hines. It's the same principle. Okay, so I gave that as my first answer. One would think that here you're now learning for the first time that this man that you think is a racist has been fighting racism not only on behalf of Africans, but on behalf of Indian people too. In fact, I started my politics in the Indian fight against Burnham and the PNC. And I that's where I started my politics. I was jailed for that. I risked and lost my liberty for 3 years fighting for East Indians, among others. But, fighting against the black government. And then the Indian government came to power, and I noticed that they're doing the same thing to black people, and I said, oh no. Oh no, 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 no. You can't do that. And I fought them in the same way. 2015 to 2020, an African government came back to power. I was a low-level operative of that government. I was employed in the Ministry of Social Cohesion, and I criticized some of the actions of that government. And I was fired summarily, without even a letter of dismissal. I never got a letter of dismissal. They just bust me off. This is a black government that I am critical of. I was writing a column, a weekly column in the Chronicle, and I was doing editorials sometimes 3, 4, 5 days a week. I would write my column, and I may be critical sometimes, but on the very day I have a column that is critical, I am writing an editorial in praise of the government. I was fired from the very top, very top. They say you can't be critical of a government that you're part of. It didn't matter to me. My philosophy is wrong. Whether it comes from black leaders or white leaders or brown leaders, wrong is wrong. That's my political tendency. So when the PPP came back to power, I said in the interview there, 2015 to 2020, I mean 2020 to 2025. When they came back with a vengeance against black people, I said, no. You up it, I'm going to up against you. The point is, that's my history. What I didn't say in that interview was that in 2002 to 2006, when gunmen were transported into my village, Buxton, and they began killing Indian people passing on the road, they're beating them, Indian people, I said, no, you're wrong. I put out a statement with Brother Yusi and Sister Ndaye. Sister Ndaye said, not in my name. And we joined her and said, no, you're not killing Indian people in my name. No, these are men with gun, killing people. Here I am risking my life on principle. Say, you cannot kill Indian people because they're Indian. You can't. I'm opposed to that. One night I was in the village and I was stopped by some of the gunmen. And they told me, well, look, we are aware of your history. And we are being told that you are against us and you're for Indian people. But we know your history. So we want you to know that your life is not in danger. No, it could have been the other way around. They could have stopped me and said, we don't know your history. There are people who are telling us that you're against us and that you're pro-Indian, and they could have killed me right there. I am doing this for Indian people, putting my life on the line for a long time. A lot of people in the black establishment didn't talk to me. They felt that I should not have taken the side. I should not have stood up for Indian people because these gunmen in Buxton were fighting for black liberation. They didn't talk to me for a long, long time. And then having gone through that, to hear Indian people, you all on Facebook, you all hear the nasty things they write about me and say about me. Not the racist thing that bothers me, because that's ignorance. It's the monkey, the low life, and all these things that they call me. A man who gave his liberty and almost lost his life for them. Now, these young journalists could claim that they didn't know that. But when I give them that answer, but not change your interview line and say, no, we should have researched and know that Dr. Haynes when he used that language, he used it in a particular context. No, the interview continued. But I understand. I could have said I wasn't going there, but I went there and I went through the interview. Because I don't think these young people are vicious to me. I think they're caught in a complex situation and they're trying to figure out how you deal with it. And maybe the way to deal with it is to have some simplistic things, some simplistic solutions. The interview was supposed to be in 40 minutes. It ended up going, I think, for an hour and 20 minutes. So they played the first part of the interview yesterday, I think. And they ended where the journalist asked me if we had just begun to discuss Azzuddin Mohammed and Win. And she asked me if I think an Indian man can represent the interests of Africa. And I began my answer by saying he will have to commit suicide. And then I went on to explain political suicide and what you have to do when you're committing political suicide. They ended the first part of the interview with the question, do you think an Indian man can represent the interests of Africans? And the preface of my answer, he will have to commit suicide. They ended there. Oh my God. Some people took that clip and put it on social media and said David Hines is saying that Azzuddin will have to kill himself. I then know some people are calling me, Dr. Hines, what's going on in this country? What is going on? You mean, if these people listen to the interview and they hear you say he will have to commit suicide, they must know it's political suicide you're talking about. But they also said the journalists were disingenuous. They should not have ended it there. They could have said, ended with the question and then say, we will start with Dr. Hines' answer in the next episode. But they hung that out there. And people said that I'm saying the man got killed himself. Well, first of all, I mourn the kind of ignorance. Because that is pure ignorance. But you know what? I have to qualify that. Because the vast majority of them did not listen to the interview. They listened to a 10-second clip. So you can't blame them. So people say you have to blame the journalists because they should know the fragility of what's happening out there. And they should not have ended the first part of the interview like that. No, that's a fair criticism. It's a fair criticism. I think they will have to learn that you don't do that. We have that social media thing. In social media, it is true, people don't read and listen to any half an hour, 2 hour, 1 hour. They read the headlines. They read the headlines. And I know that journalists, media houses want people to visit their site and visit their thing. And so, you know, they use these provocative headlines and so on. I give and take with that. But it really shows where our society is. And I wonder every day what we can do to pull the society back and to give our young people more breath from which they make decisions. You know, we have to figure it out. It's really a day. How can Guyana is an educated place. Yes, we are not in the formal education. We're not getting the results as we did 20, 30, 40 years ago. But the society is still an intelligent society. And when people can just take things literally. You know, you all heard me so many times telling some of the social media people, the influencers, you all gotta be careful, man. You all gotta educate yourself. You don't use words foolishly because people are listening to you. They're hearing you. You have to be contextual. But here is the positive that has come out of that. I have seen some champion young people on social media today who took the time to listen to the interview. Ronald Daniels, young lawyer, he led the way. And I've read, people have sent some other comments by young people to me who said they listened to the interview. And as we would say in Ghana, it's a champion interview. Because I took the opportunity. I said, look, I might as well teach. And I took the opportunity to explain concepts, to explain what is race. I saw one young man, I think it's Antonio Day, it may not be him, who said, well, this is a case of accusing a man who has spent his life fighting racism as a racist. The young people, many of them are not aware of my history. They're not aware of my history. I walk this community that I live now, Buxton. I get to spend more time here now. And I walk this thing. And young people are telling me, Dr. Hines, my mother said, you and your brother George and brother UC, teach them for free at lesson. They would come up to me, you know, and say, you teach me at lesson. You used to beat. You could have get past my brother George or brother UC. But you used to beat when you be, and young people are, but their parents, because it's a village, when they see me on TV, the parents would tell them, that man you seen on TV there, he didn't born on TV. He born in this village, and he teach me. And they still see me here doing emancipation thing every year and so on. So in the village, it's different. But for the young people who don't live in the village, they are not aware of my history. They're not aware of a lot of history. And in many regards, we have to blame ourselves as a collective. We can say that, well, the young people are not interested in history. It's not true. It's not true. We have to do more of what I try to do here every night. Brother met me at the rally there at the Square Revolution, hugged me. He said, you know, I learned so much about myself that I don't know. Yeah, I never know that Guyana could have become Israel. And he kept rocking me. And he said, you know, so many things. We have to teach. Like I said, my generation, they didn't have to do too much teaching because the thing was there in your face, in the music, in the dance. Your teachers just wearing the afro and so on. But it's changing times. And we have to give these young people some context. Young Indian journalists say he never heard the term Nimakaran, but he heard Ligbati. He heard Ligbamsi, but he never heard Nimakaran. And Nimakaran is used every day in the Indian community. It's either that journalist is not grounded in the Indian community or he just chooses not to hear it. Another young journalist said, they never hear an Amerindian criticize his fellow Amerindian for leaving the group. Very innocent answer. I have never heard it. Very innocent answer, but it's an answer that is lauded. Because if you conclude that some races do not engage in self-criticism or engage in rebuke of those who deviate from the race, then you're saying it's an African thing. It's a backward thing, and it's only Africans do it. The logical conclusion is that they're backward people. Self-criticism of those who deviate from the group is human. Human. But I don't blame those young people for not knowing that. They can only know what we teach them. Or the young man, the young journalist who never heard the term Nimakaran, he's Indian. Is either he not living among Indians or he chooses not to hear it. Because the narrative is only black people who criticize their own for denouncing the race. And so you have a generation of people who may be growing up thinking that, when it's absolutely not true. We all know that Nimakaran in Hindi is the worst cuss word. It's a cuss word. It's a cuss word. But you ask those same young people say they don't know Nimakaran. They will tell you they know about house slaves. They know about slave catcher. They know about lick bottom. But they don't know about Nimakaran. And as far as Amerindians are concerned, Amerindians don't do that. It's really a bad state. And again, I'm not criticizing the young people because the education system has failed them, both the formal education system and the informal education system. And so they form conclusions about society based on a limited worldview. And by worldview, I mean the larger view of life, of society. And these are brighter than me, brighter than us. And these are people who are opinion formers, opinion shapers. But there are these large gaps, and they arrive at conclusions. We have a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do, because I'm getting afraid of what this society could turn out to be. The gaps, the knowledge gap. I was glad that one of the journalists who interviewed me said she'd written Carter G. Woodson's The Miseducation of the Negro, which was a very trenchant self-criticism of Africans. But in the interview, she said, but he didn't say it like that. And I had to go at pains to say, you are more interested in how I say it rather than what I say. You know, it's a struggle. It's a struggle. And I'm giving those examples not because I want to be critical. I love those young people. I love them. But our society has done them a great disservice. It has not made it easy for them to learn about themselves. It's almost as if they have to run away from their own identity because the society persecutes and prosecutes them. We're really in a bad way. Very bad way. But we can't give up. We cannot give up. because there are other people who are pushing them, because they want to control the society economically. And in order to control the society economically, you have to get rid of what you see as obstacle. And the conscious African is an obstacle to racism, is an obstacle to economic domination. It's an obstacle to supremacy. And so there is this formal and informal drive to strip the African youth of any connection to his or her identity and history. On the slave plantation, they did that. They tried to erase Africa from the enslaved. They weren't too sensible because they're killing people by the time they're 20, 30, 25. And they have to bring new enslaved people. And as they bring enslaved people, the enslaved people are bringing Africa within. And so historical memory was there on the plantation. Or in Haiti after the 1804 revolution, they basically shut off Haiti from the rest of the world. And so what happened in Haiti is that you had the when you shut people off, they reproduce themselves. And so in Haiti, they will reproduce in Africa. By the time they open up Haiti to the rest of the world, Haiti was the authentic Africa. Even Africa itself wasn't reproducing Africa in the way Haiti did. And so historical memory. But these here have cut our young people off from even their recent history. That is why people like myself become enemies. Because we are trying to reconnect young Africans to their history. And they see that as a fly in the ointment, because when you cut people off from their history, you're cutting them off from their identity and their reason for being. And again, they're going to take clips, small clips of what I say tonight. But you all are here. I am not blaming those young people. I love them. I you know, that's why I call the program tonight, Teach the Children. Teach the children. My daughter, my daughter texted me today and she said, everybody's looking for their 15 minutes of fame. Here they go again, misrepresenting what you said. And I can feel the pain because my children have had to live with this all their lives. And I can feel the pain in my daughter, the pain in what she wrote there. Of course, she knows me as a father, as an individual, and she knows that I'm not racist and all of that. But you can feel the pain. Here they go again. It's as if this society is intent on destroying the African man or woman who does not allow himself or herself to be used against their own group. I understand young people who want to play ball with the PPP. I understand that. And people must, if they want to do that, go do it. But if you recognize their contradictions in such action, then you have to figure out your own self-defense. And your self-defense can be to crucify somebody who's trying to give some sense to the society, the community. If you want to go, go. If you recognize their consequences to go in, then battle your own canoe. Develop your own way of defending yourself. I hereby declare on Politics 101 that I'm resigning from the opposition and I'm going over to the PPP. Big headline tomorrow papers. What is a Nancy story? It's a Nancy story. If I decide that I go join the PPP after long history of the kind of activism, and I know the world coming down tomorrow. I know that. I may say, well, David Hines, you broke. Go and see if they're going to give you 100 million. And then the next time they may say, you're going to get 100 million. But half of the society will come down on you and say, shame on you, Dr. Hines. And they will persecute and prosecute you to the end of time. I can't make a choice. 100 million on the prosecution. You know, you can't want to swim against the tide and want to be treated as though you're swimming with the tide. Life don't work like that. If you could have gone and lived normal, yeah. But you know, once you get there, you know, got to change your mouth or turn your mouth the next way. That is what we're calling the LB, the lake bottom. That's what. It's not you going. As I said in that interview, I have to take people at face value. I never hear Ernest Walls run. Talk dumb black people. Oh, they're lazy. And I never hear the lady say it. I never hear Tandai behave that way. I don't know these Dalrymple Boy and Griffith. I don't know them. But I never hear them talk down black people. So they do not fall in the category of LBs. My friend Pelori Joe, as you all know, talk down black people. So Pelori, the students will, if I ask the students, give me 3 examples, you might get in the Pelori. It is not being in the PPP. It's not being in the PPP and then you take your eyes past black people. Yeah. So it's not black people in the PPP who are the LBs. It's black people who of recent vintage who go over to the PPP and then overcompensate. Have to justify and explain why they're over there. And have to say, me I like them. Them now over there who supporting APNO and the PNC. Them different. We have a lot of work to do. We are still asking the question of what happened on September 1st. As far as the African vote is concerned. Now, it's just a vote. A vote is a political action. It's not a cultural action, but it's a political action that could have cultural consequences. But we still have to find out what happened. Why our Indian young people didn't do as their African counterparts. All them just party now in Georgetown together. All of them just hang out together. Because as I said in the interview, black people and Indian people are not historical enemies. They never enslave each other. They're not historical enemies. They're not social enemies that just hang out together, go to school together, drink up together, date one another, they're not social enemies. Black people just play Pagua and thing. One Indian just dress up in a dashiki on Emancipation Day. They are right. It's at the political level that our hostility to each other is manifested. And that is so because in a winner-take-all system, only one group could govern. And each group is going to compete with each other to maximize. Each group is going to maximize its chances of winning. And our Indo-Guyanese brothers and sisters figure out, wrongly or rightly, take your pick, they figure out that if we vote together, we maximize our chances of winning and getting into power. African people, most of the time, African people think the same way. In this case, in 2025, they decided to dilute that vote. And I'm sure they were reasoning that in doing so, we are maximizing our chances of winning. As it turned out, they badly miscalculated. Or maybe they didn't even want to win. But the thing is to think that they're stupid, because if you're in a contest, you want to win. We have to figure out that puzzle. It's a puzzle. It's a puzzle. We have to figure it out. I think, and I can say it now, I've been putting off saying it. I don't think this thing is sustainable. I don't think the win thing is sustainable. History has shown that in these types of societies, those things come, they peak very quickly, and then they subside. We could have been making a different reasoning if, in addition to the 80,000 Africans or so that voted win, if you had 80,000 Indians who voted win, then we would have been talking differently. Then it would no longer be a puzzle. It would be clear. But it has never happened in these kinds of societies. As I pointed out, 1953 was the last time Indians and Africans voted for the same political entity. And within 133 days, that government was kicked out of power. Within the next year, the thing split up to what we now know as PPP and PNC. Here we go. Another day, we're going to overcome. We're going to overcome. We're going to overcome. We have to. We don't have any choice. We have to teach the children. If at the risk of being criticized, we have to fill the gaps. See you all tomorrow night.